The selfish giant. The garden of the closed mind. Once there was a garden that mirrored a mind. It was radiant, filled with song and color, a perfect reflection of joy. Then came the thought of ownership. My garden, my castle, my peace. That single thought, so small it could fit between breaths, was the first stone in the wall. And like every wall built by fear, it was not built to protect love, but to keep it out. The Course says ideas leave not their source. When the mind builds a wall against love, it shuts itself away from what it is. That is why the garden froze, not as punishment but as mirror. The frost on the trees was the frost in the heart. The branches stripped bare were the mind stripped of trust. The snow that covered everything was guilt pretending to be purity. Spring, the symbol of renewal, simply waited for permission to return. Love is patient, but it will not invade. It will not climb over the ego's wall. It waits for the smallest crack, the place where a little willingness leaks through. And that is what the child represents. A single thought of innocence that slips through the defenses of pride. He comes bleeding, but the wounds are of love, not attack. He mirrors the ancient call of the Christ within, "Let the little children come to me." Not because they are small in body, but because they have not yet believed the world's lie of separation. The giant, in seeing the boy, sees himself. The mind finally looks upon its projection and recognizes the illusion of threat. The boy's simple need, to climb a tree, is symbolic of the soul's natural longing to rise, to ascend above judgment, to see from a higher place. When the giant lifts the boy, he is lifting his own thought higher. He joins with innocence, and the garden responds immediately. Leaves return, flowers open, and birds sing, all effects of a healed perception. The Course reminds that what you see is an outpicture of an inner condition. Change the mind, and the world reflects the shift. The thaw begins not from the sun, but from forgiveness. The giant forgives the children, but really he forgives himself for believing in loss. The cold was never in the weather, it was in the thought. That's the central mirror of this story. What the world calls selfishness is only a mind terrified of love. It builds defenses not to harm others, but to avoid the light it thinks will expose its shame. Every wall says, "Don't come too close, you might see me." But love never wanted to see guilt, only to see through it. The boy's wounds awaken the giant because they prove that love can suffer without hating. They dissolve the confusion between hurt and harm. He realizes that pain without blame is the door back to heaven. And as he takes the boy's hand, death itself becomes gentle. The story ends where all true endings begin, not in punishment, but in joining. The little boy leads the giant to the Garden of Paradise. Not another place, but the same garden seen truly. The flowers that cover his body are the forgiven thoughts that bloom when guilt is gone. In Course terms, this is the holy instant, the moment the mind remembers it was never separate. The wall was never real. The winter was never real. The selfishness was never real. Only the idea of isolation ever was, and even that was just a passing cloud over an eternal sun. The children never stopped singing. The garden never stopped growing. Only the giant stopped seeing. And when he finally looked with love instead of fear, he discovered the truth that had been waiting beneath the ice all along. Heaven is not reached by climbing, but by melting. By letting every frozen thought of mine become ours, and every alone become all one. That is the thaw of the cold heart. That is the end of winter. That is the miracle.